Welcome back to the Life Outside podcast. My name is Cam Bostock, and on this episode I chat to Ezra Johnson. Ezra is an ultra-experienced thru-hiker with over 15,000 miles on trails like the Pacific Crest, Appalachian, and Continental Divide. He's also an ultralight gear enthusiast with a YouTube channel dedicated to ultralight philosophy and advice. With a base weight of just 4 pounds or 2 kilograms on the Pacific Crest Trail this season, Ezra has a lot of wisdom to share. We hope you enjoy. The Life Outside podcast is proudly brought to you by OptiVenture, the first supplement and nutrition company specifically built for hikers and outdoor adventurers. I co-founded OptiVenture alongside my adventure buddy Hirsch back in 2023. There simply wasn't a product on the market that gave outdoorsy folk like you and me a convenient and comprehensive solution to micronutrition on trail. So we spent 2 years alongside a team of nutritionists, dietitians, and supplement scientists and formulated it ourselves. OptiVenture Core, our all-in-one supplement system, is available now, and you can find detailed ingredient breakdowns and information on the science and research behind our products at optiventure.co. There'll be a link in the podcast description, and you can use code LIFEOUTSIDE at checkout to get 10% off. All right, let's get into today's episode. Ezra, welcome to the Life Outside podcast.
Hello.
Good to meet you, mate. We've only just met briefly before starting the recording, but I mentioned to you that I've been following your YouTube channel for the last few months and your journey sort of along the Pacific Crest Trail, which I believe is your second end-to-end on the PCT. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you're an incredibly experienced backpacker. You've done the Triple Crown of the US, almost 2 times now. And your YouTube channel just revolves a lot about gear talk. And I just find that really intriguing, and specifically ultralight gear. There's not many creators out there who are just like so dialed into ultralight and all the sort of nitty gritty details. So excited to chat gear, through hiking, and all of the above with you, mate. Appreciate you making the time. Where did backpacking start from you? You've covered a lot of miles. I think I tried to add up all your trails that you listed on your YouTube channel that you've done, and it's like over 15,000 miles, probably closer towards 20,000 miles of backpacking total. You've spent a lot of time on trail. Where did your love for the trails begin?
I think I started backpacking sophomore year of high school, and my dad got me the Beyond Backpacking book by Ray Jardine. And I did sophomore summer something. I did a 3-day backpacking trip, and then I did a week backpacking trip and was lucky to run into a group of ultralighters. So I was able to,
Wow.
a group of thru hikers. And so I was able to backpack with
Okay.
AT thru hikers as a high schooler. And then I thru hiked in 2004 when I was 18 and finished high school.
So you threw like the AT at 18 years old.
Right about a week after high school, I started the Appalachian Trail.
Jeez. So was it just hanging out with those through hikers on that first backpacking trip, just chatting to them that got you interested in walking the whole trail end to end? Because that's a pretty big thing to do,
Yeah.
like straight out of school as an 18-year-old. Like that's like a pretty big undertaking.
I think when the first time I heard about it, which was in my high school girlfriend's house, she was on worked with the AMC in the summer. The first time I heard about it, I was like, I'm going to do this. And then by the second backpacking trip that I did, I knew that I wanted to do it. So
What about it made you say, I'm going to do this, like so certainly at such a young age?
I don't know. I find the same thing with some of my friends. Like I have a friend who just did the Colorado Trail, and the moment that I started talking about through hiking, I could see it in her eyes. It just sort of clicked, and she was like, "That's something that I want to do." And it was the same. I mean, in '04, it was no one knew about Appalachian Trail through hiking, so it was like sort of this special, beautiful adventure. I had no idea what was going to happen as I was walking, and I wanted that kind of adventure.
Yeah, it was a similar thing for me. I think I didn't discover backpacking until sort of my mid-20s, but my mate took me out on my local through hike, the Biberman Track, which is like a 650-mile trail here in Western Australia. And just a couple of days out in that trail, once I sort of realized what this backpacking thing was, the actual length of the trail, if in total. We only did a couple of days of it. It was the same for me. Like it instantly sort of clicked, and I was like, I want to do that trail one day. And I don't actually know why particularly. There's just something about being outside, I guess, that clicked with me. And yeah, as soon as I could, I walked the bib track end to end, and after that, it was it was over. I think I was a through hiker from then on out. What was that first through hiking experience like for you? Like the ATs are over 2,000 mile long trail. You're 18 years old. Obviously, you knew that this is something you'd be interested in. Was it an amazing experience?
It was, yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience. It was really hard. I was going southbound. I finished January 1st on Springer.
Oh wow,
And so I think I walked with other people for about 2 weeks. I had 2 or 3 feet of snow in the Smokies. I made a lot of mistakes. I got seriously dehydrated and hypothermic twice or three times.
wow.
But like looking back over 20 years, it completely changed the entire course of my life. I think when I finished, I was like, I still feel the same because as a high schooler, I hadn't really had big life experiences. And so I finished and I'm like, I'm still me. Like I wanted to, have this experience where I completely changed. But then looking back over 20 years, everything changed. So it was super influential.
Only a through hiker can say that an experience was amazing after being hypothermic and dehydrated and probably a million other things that went wrong. But it's kind of why we do it, isn't it? Because hard things happen and tough things happen, but overcoming them, like you said, in hindsight, is it's a really powerful thing. And I think most people that do a long through hike will look back years down the line and realize that was sort of a turning point for them. My first through hike was exactly the same. During it and straight after, I was on top of the world. I had the best time. But looking back now, which is only 5 years ago for me, it changed the trajectory of my life. I wouldn't have come over to the US and hiked the PCT and done all these other incredible trails around the world if I didn't step out sort of onto that first through. And it's always going to be pretty special. When did you do the Appalachian Trail for the second time? Was it a fair while after that first one in 2004?
Yeah, it was. I did it on my 20th anniversary, and I did it northbound. So
Wow.
I think I did it 3 years ago. I don't know, something like that.
So how did the experience of the Appalachian Trail change 20 years apart?
I think it's still the same. It's still pretty much the same trail. There's more people, but there were more people. There were a lot of people in 2004 still doing it. I think the major thing that's changed is sort of the same thing that's changed in everywhere, and that is like phones and far out. In 2004, we had a guidebook called Wingfoot, and you're sort of going through this other guy's experience as you hike the trail. And he explained towns and water sources and all of that. But I think the biggest change is that there's a whole culture around the composition notebooks that are in shelters, because that's the only way that you could communicate with your friends that were behind you. And if you
Wow.
wanted to communicate with your friends behind you, most people carried like a little notebook or a post-it, and you'd stick that on a tree, and you'd be like, "I'm going into town. It's whatever time." And then as your friend walked by, they'd grab the note. So there's like fun little things that happen then that don't happen now, but generally it's same kind of people. It's still the trail, it's still hard. You're still walking. So
Yeah, that's so funny how much it can change just with technology. Like everything's obviously changed wildly over the last couple of decades with the advent of phones and computers and internet, because now you can just text your friend a couple of days later and
right.
a couple of days behind you or whatever. And there's probably, I don't know how much mobile reception you get on the Appalachian Trail, but I imagine it's a fair bit. There's quite a lot of road access and town access on that trail. Right? I haven't walked it myself, but definitely a different world with phones. Do you think it's like a positive thing now, having access to stuff like far out and all these modern technologies and mapping and all that kind of stuff? Because I've never known anything else. My first through hike I used far out. It was Guthook at the time. I don't know what life before far out was, but I often talk to people who did, and it kind of sounds almost just a little simpler and a little nicer and a little more of a raw experience.
Yeah, I mean it's not huge, so I wouldn't be like disappointed that I didn't get in there when there were no phones, but and I also think that it's like it's really great because people that wouldn't have done it before are now able to do it. Like the PCT, no one was doing the PCT because you heard that you need to do route finding and then people were like, "Well, I can't do that, so I'm not going to do it." And then even more with the CDT. And so now that we have like these GPS, we have far out the CDT is totally available to everyone. Whereas before it was like you sort of had to build up your experience, be really courageous, make sure that everything's dialed, and then you can go and do the CDT. Now you're still able to like you just follow the line. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, I guess it's become more accessible due to things like far out, probably safer as well. Although I don't know if it's always safer because there's probably an over reliance on things like far out. I can't imagine. I can't imagine not having a map in front of me, like an app that tells me where the water is and all that kind of stuff. I think I
Uh-huh.
over rely on it a bit as well. It's like I kind of wish I had a bit of time beforehand to learn some different skills. Whereas now you just kind of look at your phone and say, "Oh, well, there's going to be water there." Someone told me that someone put a comment there saying that it's flowing, so I'm all good. I hear stories of people walking the BCT, 20, 30 years ago, and it's like you have to do huge water carries because you're never quite sure where the water's going to be, and there's nowhere to be sort of sure that there's water there. And yeah, it's just a whole different world. I guess I would never probably quite experience that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's still, you can still go to Alaska. You can still, there's lots of, Cal Topo kind of. There's the Death Valley Loop. There's still ones that you still need to map. We still have GPX,
Mm.
but you can experience that. It's out there. There's that kind of wild.
Yeah, maybe I need to seek that out more because I tend to be like, oh, I want to do this trail. I wonder if there's a far out for it, and if there's not, I'm like, oh,
Right.
it's too much.
Totally.
It's too much effort. Uh, yeah, it's interesting though. But I mean, it really has made through hiking so much more accessible. People are getting out on trails that just that wouldn't probably otherwise, which is really cool. And maybe that gets people into some sketchy situations sometimes if they're maybe not actually ready for it. But I think yeah, people find out a lot about themselves by just sort of stepping out. So it's probably an overall positive thing. What's your journey in ultralight gear over the last sort of 20 odd years of backpacking? I imagine your first walk on the AT. I mean, a lot of the modern gear technologies weren't around. The modern materials weren't around back then. How's that sort of evolved for you over the years? Because that's something that you're clearly super passionate about these days.
Yeah, so that's like sort of there's a little thing in what you said that like brought up I don't know, something that I think about and talk about a lot, and that is like modern fabrics versus the fabrics we had in 2004. And the reality is that the modern fabrics have not really advanced. Like DCF, dynamic human fiber, is not better in every way than Silpoly or grid stop, which is what we were using before. And so that's a whole discussion. But
You
but
brought
yeah,
that up
yeah,
a
I've
bunch
started.
on your YouTube.
I think that most people, Johnny Z as well, he like most people that have gotten really into through hiking eventually get really into fabrics. If you're really into gear, the next step is that you get really obsessive about fabrics because that's really where it's changing and that's really the cutting edge. Most of the backpacks look the same, etc. But when I first started, I used my dad's like 1980s North Face canvas backpack. I cut it up because I tried to make it lighter.
Wow.
I decided I wasn't going to bring a spoon because, I'll just whittle chopsticks or something, which didn't work. I was going to cold soak, but back then we didn't know what you could cold soak and what you couldn't. So I thought I could cold soak like spaghetti, which didn't work. So my first week backpacking, I learned a lot. And then on the Appalachian Trail, I had a Granite Gear backpack, which was amazing. They still make amazing backpacks. And then I got a Go Light Breeze, which was the company that the sort of the forefather of ultralight, Ray Jardine, was part of. And then there's a lot of drama there, so it doesn't exist anymore. But I got his backpack, the one that he designed. And then I was using a Nunatac quilt in 2004. There were Nunatac is also a small company, and there was no one making quilts. And so by halfway through the trail, I had a hipless backpack, the only company that was making a hipless backpack, which was Go Light. I think Mountain Laurel Designs had just come out. You know, they just started. Gossamer Gear was one guy in his garage. And yeah, so the second half I was able to get pretty light. I think I was in the 6 pound range. And then backpacking through college a bit, I was still in that sort of light range. And then I sort of got off of backpacking for a while before I came back for my second, or no, my first PCT in 21. I mean, my yeah, my first PCT, my second through hike in 21.
So you had are you saying you had a 6 pound base weight in 2004? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yeah. I got to Harper's Ferry, and they used to weigh all of the backpacks, and that year I had the lightest backpack. But I think there was only like 400 through southbounders that year, 300 southbounders.
You've always just had this inkling for wanting to go ultralight. What was it for you? Was it just like, I think the trail is going to be more enjoyable if there's less weight on my back. I'm going to be able to walk further, walk easier, and have a better time. What was the motivation?
I think I read Ray Jardine's book and it just made sense. I just loved his philosophy around like modern era ultralight has turned into sort of this like hipster movement of people thinking that they know better than everyone else. But back then there wasn't really an ultralight movement. There's only like a few people and most people sewed their own gear. And it was just about how can you be most comfortable on trail and sort of optimizing what you have so that your kit is perfectly sort of designed for what you're doing. And I like the optimization. I like the idea of sort of being quieter and less sort of. Ray Jardine talks about like walking white lightly on the ground, which I get. I mean, either you're like have a heavy step or you don't. But like I like the idea of having less.
Yeah, wow. That blows my mind that you were sort of in so deep into the ultralight philosophy that early on. I mean, I thought I was pretty ultralight in the PCT last year. I had like a 8 or 9 pound base weight. And you're out here with a 6 pounder in 2004. I know your PCT through this year, you had an extremely ultralight setup. I'd love for you to, just for context for the listeners, to walk us through your gear list for the PCT this year, because I guess it's a culmination of 20 to 25 years of optimizing your ultralight setup.
Yeah, so in my videos, I talk about the fact that like you really have to know the conditions that you're getting into. And so with the PCT, I'd already done it before. And so I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of rain. And so I used the DCF Gear Swift's poncho tarp, which sounds crazy, but I set it up, twice the entire trail. And so uh, knowing that I wasn't going to really need a shelter, I got the lightest shelter possible, which was, I think, under 5 ounces. Do you want me to go through my gear, or do you want me to talk about sort of the psychology of how you do it?
I'd love for you to talk about the psychology of how you sort of went about forming the gear for the PCT. That'd be awesome. But I'd also
Yeah,
love
you want to know
to
the
go through
actual gear.
through through the
Um,
stuff. I mean, I've watched your gear list video, but I know people will find it super interesting. Like, what was your base weight on the PCT?
it was 4.5 pounds.
4.5 pounds. So
Yeah,
for those outside of America, that's like just over two
dude.
kilograms. Two
Yeah,
for
and
for for everything to live on trail for 5 months. So it's
and the
pretty
reality is,
wild.
like, it's not if you're not comfortable on trail, if you're not sleeping, like, it's not you're not ultra light. You know what I mean? Like, if you're just like, I'm not going to sleep the whole. So I think there's this idea that ultralighters are just suffering, and like I'm not. Like, I have a self-inflatable air mattress, which is the old school thermarest where there's foam inside. I only have it that it covers my torso because I use my food bag for my pillow. And then I put my backpack underneath my feet. And the reality is, you really don't lose. And I know it's going to sound, people think it's great. You really don't lose comfort if you have your pad under the parts of your body that are sort of sticking hard onto the ground. So your shoulder blades and your tailbone and your pelvis. And so And my sleeping pad was the heaviest thing that I had in my backpack at like 9.5 ounces, which is, like I could have brought a sleeping pad that was 5 ounces, but that's super important. And then knowing that I always want to have a quilt that is 10 degrees warmer than it will ever get. So if it's going to freeze, I want a 20-degree quilt. If it's going to be 40 degrees, I want a 30-degree quilt. And what I tell a lot of people is like, don't spend most of your weight on your sleeping bag. So like instead of carrying a really big puffy, maybe have an Alpha Direct fleece and put the rest, those 3 ounces into down, because you're going to get a lot more warmth through down than you are anything else. And so always making sure having a sleeping pad that I know I can sleep comfortably on and a sleeping bag that is always warm enough. You never want to be cold. So, and then rain jacket, it was a poncho, so I didn't have a rain jacket. My backpack I started with a custom pack that I had a friend of mine, Encore, make, and then, which was like 6 ounces or something like that. That fell apart, and so I got a Palante Joey backpack, which is incredible and super comfortable.
Yeah, it's so crazy how you can get so light, but it really comes through in your videos how much you prioritize, not being freezing cold, not being super uncomfortable. Like you're bringing stuff that you're quite happy to live with for 5 months, and you're not miserable with. And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people have for super ultralighters, is that they're suffering in some way or sacrificing so much that the trail becomes unenjoyable, which would just defeat the whole point in the first place, right? You're out in nature and on these trails to have a good time, in theory. And so, if your gear isn't allowing you to do that, then there's no point having it so light. I think for me, that's something I've learned over the last couple of years. I think there's a few pieces of gear that I'm just quite happy to have a bit more weight carrying, because it does bring me a bit more comfort. Like I'm not a huge fan of cowboy camping. I think I cowboyed like maybe 10 or 20 nights on the PCT, even though, like you said, you can do it pretty much every night. It barely rains. I think we had 2 nights of rain last season as well. So I love an enclosed shelter, which is going to be a bit heavier than just a poncho tarp. Actually, funnily enough, I was going to say, like, I've never cold soaked on trail, because I just love a hot meal and a hot coffee too much. But I did a big hike today, and I cold soaked for the first time for the hike today, just to sort of see how it was, and I hated it. But
Yeah,
I think it's
and it was
something.
terrible.
It sucked. But I'm actually, so as we're recording this, in about 10 days, I'm going to attempt to FKT actually on my local through hike, the Bibbulmun track, the one I first ever walked. I'm attempting an unsupported FKT on it. And so I think it's silly to not cold soak, to just save those few ounces or those few grams. So that's why I'm sort of testing the waters. So I think I'm just going to commit to that anyway. But I don't think it's something I do on like a, a through hike that I don't want to enjoy. And so there's those little things that, I'm not quite willing to sacrifice. So I don't think that I can potentially get as light as if I was willing to sacrifice. But for you, you're quite happy to cowboy camp and cold soak, and therefore, it's a bit of a different sort of context for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a big video right now where I'm going to do 3 gear lists at 3 different weight points. So an 8 pound base weight, which to me is like everything. You have everything. Matt Schafter did a video. I think his base weight is 7.5 pounds. He's got like a hip belt backpack. He's got the full tent. He's got everything. And then a 6 pound where you still have a tent, but it doesn't really have a floor. And then what it looks like to get in that 4 or 5 pound base weight. And so I think that like you can have a tent if you bring like an Altaplex or a Plexamid from Z Packs. I think you can have a cook set for under 4 or 5 ounces where you have the BRS stove and you have like a bot pot. And so it's nowadays all of the like high level comforts that people like they absolutely needed to have. There's setups where you can still get it really light. So because I get it, like
Yeah,
cold soaking sucks. So.
So you hate cold soaking as well?
No, well, even in my daily life, I'm not a foodie. So I've
Yeah.
always, food sort of might be broken for me. I just look at it as fuel. When you're doing big miles, you're just eating constantly. And so it really starts to feel like you're just putting gasoline into your body. It's just like I'm just fueling my body. It's not, there's no this, that feeling of you get to camp and you get to like sit down and make a meal and it's so nice. That's like for town. Like I usually am eating dinner while I'm walking and I'm eating breakfast while I'm walking also. And so I just like take my cold soak peanut butter jar out and eat while I'm walking.
For me, there's just like the level of difference between cold soaked ramen and a nice warm cooked ramen is like
Yeah,
night
yeah.
and day. It's like so far apart. And with the amount of ramen that's consumed on a through hike, yeah, I think I'll stick with cooking it. It's so funny. I know there's people listening that have already through hiked or are planning one, and their base weight's like closer to 20 pounds than it is five. What would you say are some just like really easy switches, or like what are some common things that you see people who aren't as experienced on trail, aren't experienced with gear? What are some mistakes that people make and some easy switches they can make to sort of drop, even pounds?
Yeah. I think it's a psychological thing. What happens, a example that I used on trail to a friend was when you haven't through hiked, it's sort of an example would be like you're going to a dance and you don't know if the dance is tango or electronic or salsa. And so you don't really know how to dress. And so what you end up doing is, if it's an electronic show, you're going to you're going to dress like it's a rave. If it's tango, maybe you'd be dressing with a button down shirt. You don't know. And so you just pick sort of this middle area where you think it's going to be. And so you don't know what the conditions are going to be really, and you're afraid that you're not going to bring the thing that you need. And for your entire domestic life, being clean, what is really important. And there's a lot of different things that exist in the domestic world that you don't need. You don't understand the culture that's on the trail. And so in the same way, you dress sort of just generally, and on trail people do, it is okay to wear the same clothing for 5 days, and people get really dirty, and that's okay. That's like part of the culture. And so like the big thing would be like you don't need sleep clothing, you don't need town clothing. Look at what the lowest temperature is going to be, and pack your clothing in relationship to that. If you can get and try to pick clothing that's lighter clothing. So don't bring a big heavy fleece, find an Alpha Direct fleece. A lot of the stuff that you might use for going hiking to keep you warm is not the perfect clothing for hiking. So first focus on clothing.
Yeah, clothing's a pretty big thing for people. Like just bringing extra sets of clothes. I think especially on like shorter backpacking trips when you're quite new to it, people I've seen people, go out with a set of clothes for each day, that kind of stuff. I think it's a very easy way to drop a lot of weight really quick if you've got just like all these cotton layers and stuff that you're planning to change into every day. Because the reality is, like you said, you're going to be filthy very quickly, no matter if you change into fresh clothes every day. You're sweaty, you're in the dirt, and it's just not necessary. It's definitely a big one.
Yeah, I talked there's a kid this year who finished his through hike of the PCT that he started when he was 14, and now he finished as a 15-year-old Simba.
Wow.
And he asked me at one of the national parks if I could just look at all of his gear, and he spread it all out. And something that I noticed was he didn't have any extra stuff. It was just the pieces. He had this like really heavy fleece that he didn't need. And he had these rain pants that could have been dance pants, ripstop nylon pants. And so it was like, and his electronics, he was carrying like two 20 milliamp battery banks. And making the battery banks just one 10,000 milliamp battery bank, changing the fleece and changing his pants like saved him like almost 2 pounds. So it's also can just be like choice of which piece of clothing, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so outside of clothing, like what about some of the, your big four, Often it's just getting an ultralight version of that thing, right?
Well, so another thing that's like a lot of people think with ultralight is that it's going to be really expensive. You do not. I did a video on an entire super ultralight kit that's under six pounds. That's $250, the entire kit. And so, especially if it's your first through hike, there's no reason to buy DCF unless like you want people to know you bought DCF, which is fine. Like I think it's totally cool if you want to have something that feels really premium, but you can buy a tarp or something made out of steel poly and it still can be really light. So like a tent, Six Moon Designs has really incredible light tents. You want the ones that are tarp tents, not ones that look like real tents. The ones that look like real tents that they make get a lot of condensation, but they're like Deschutes tarp and stuff like that is still has bug netting and it's a tarp. And I think it's like maybe a pound and a half, something like that. And then I'm trying to think of the other big threes. The sleeping pad could be an entire podcast talking about sleeping pads.
Your
There's a lot of
your sleeping
issues
pad
there.
situation is super unique because you do not see very
Yeah.
many self-inflating sleeping mats on through hikes. Full stop. I don't know if I've ever seen someone with a self-inflating mat. It's either a foam mat or just a normal inflatable mat without the foam inside. Talk us through that.
So I think we like innovated ourselves to something that's less comfortable since 2004. Like in 2004, that's all there were was like self-inflatable pads, and that's what Thermarest got famous on was their self-inflatable pads, and they're still more comfortable than these pads that are like that are this thick.
They
And
are.
the mate,
Yeah, they are.
yeah. So the major reason why is because uh, most people sleep on their side. So it's like it's crazy when you're on trail and someone's like, "Well, I have this special. I have to have this really thick sleeping pad because I sleep on my side." And the reality is, everyone sleeps on their side. And so you can't, if your knee goes over the pad, then you're like falling off this cliff with a fully inflatable pad, and you can't do three-quarter length because you can't have part of your body off of the pad and it just feels like you're sleeping on sort of a pool toy. And so the self-inflatable pads, even though they're heavier, you cut them down to half length, and they're still 8 pounds. They're way, way, way more comfortable. And then outside of the Appalachian Trail, where you have to sleep on wood, on the PCT, when you're always on the ground, you can have a closed cell foam pad. Not the Gossamer Gear 1/8 pads or the 3/4 closed cell foam pad that Gossamer Gear cells because those are really thin and pretty much only special people can sleep on those. But a real like closed cell phone pad by like Thermarest or whatever.
Yeah, like I've got all the pads, I've got a self-inflatable one, I've got all the foam pads for therm rest and the inflatable ones, and the self-inflatable pads are the most comfortable. And I don't know, in my head I'm just like they're heavier, so that's not what I use for through hiking. But that's just one of the things I love about your channel is it's just made me think about things differently. And for those of you who are curious about Ezra's channel, I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Go binge watch his content. It's really incredible. Even if you're not planning to go down to a 4 pound base weight yourself, you'll learn a lot. But yeah, I mean, I was blown away when I found out you're using a self-inflatable mat. But it just makes all the sense in the world. And it's interesting that you say, we kind of like sort of over engineered our way past the self-inflatable mats when maybe that was sort of like the winning formula all along.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just cut your self-inflatable pad in half, and then it's going to be around 9 ounces. And then you don't you don't need a full length pad because you're not falling off of it because it's not this like huge like thick thing. And then you can put a pillow or extra whatever you have as your pillow, and it's way more comfortable than having to like stay on this thing as you're going to sleep and have to be like super worried that I was in the San Juans on the Continental Divide trail, and there's like 2 or 3 feet, 2 feet of snow, and my sleeping pad. I was trying out the Thermarest X Lite, and it popped. And so you're always worried it's going to pop. So yeah, just cut the Pro Lights in half.
Yeah, I'm going to give that a good crack because yeah, Yeah, you've probably convinced me. Do you think there's other pieces of kit or just like ultralight gear in general that have sort of been over engineered over the years? Is simpler better in a lot of situations?
I think like simpler is always better. And that's what the ultralight community's got a bad name because it starts to look like people are just spending as much money as possible on gear. And the original ultralight was just about carrying less and carrying simpler pieces of gear that can be used for multiple things. Like having just a piece of fabric, which is a tarp, can be used for so many other things than just a shelter. And so yeah, I mean, specifics would be I don't think that if you're a through hiker, that these quilts that have these side box baffle systems that sort of like self fold underneath you, they're great for the first week, but the moment you start losing loft because of it being dirty, it just falls apart and it looks like every other sleeping bag. So like Hyperlight came out with their new quilt and like it has all this like really advanced baffle system stuff and like you just on a through hike none of that's going to matter in like 2 weeks. So and that's why I like Enlightened Equipment's sleeping bags because they're just super simple. It's just a sleeping bag. You don't need all of this like crazy stuff.
So a good rule of thumb, just keep things as simple as possible, and there's less things that can go wrong, less unexpected situations, right? Do you think that like through hiking materials, through hiking design has sort of reached its upper limit? Do you think we'll regress back to simpler things, or do you think there's still room in the technology and the materials themselves to be improved and become even lighter?
My hope is that Thermarest will innovate to a better sleeping pad. Like I think there's space for it. All of the new fabrics are cool, like the Ultras and the DCFs, and we had EP 400 and Nashville Packs just is starting to use this new like graphite fabric. All of it, they're cool and they work in one domain. Like they're really good in one domain. So like whatever abrasion or something. But then in other domains, they're terrible and they fall apart immediately. And so they ultimately are not more durable at all. Like DCF is not more durable than Silpoly because in this one domain, if you mess up and it gets a lot of abrasion, it completely falls apart or ultra delaminates, even though they've figured out a new way to sew it so it stays laminate. And it's still I mean, maybe, I don't know, but they keep coming out with these new fabrics that are super expensive and they don't work as well as the old school stuff. And I don't think I'm just saying that because I started hiking in 2004. So maybe, but I don't think so.
What is like? Do you have like sort of like a checklist or like a way of evaluating gear or new gear that you try that like either it ticks the box, obviously lightweight is one criteria, but other things that you look at in any piece of gear that's like this is going to work for me on trail or it's not, and straight away.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I get an Amazon package and I'll open it and I'll just be like, well, that won't work, and then send it back. That happened or I get a package from like a month before trail when all the packages are coming in and I'm getting, you pretty much immediately know. But do I have a checklist? I think that
It's like
there's
a pass fail test kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, immediately, if I'm on trail and I don't like something that's in my kit, that's all I can think about. Like, I'm just like, like, I just hate it, I'm just like, but there's definitely like upper limits for things. Like, you can't have a backpack that weighs over a pound. You can't have a sleeping pad that weighs over a pound. You can't have a tent that weighs over a pound, which is like a little less than a kilo. I'm sorry, half a kilo, a little less than half a
Half a
kilo.
kilo, yeah.
I have like weight criteria, trying to think of other checkpoint things. I think I don't like things that are solving an issue that doesn't actually exist. That bothers me. I'm trying to think of examples like that. I can't think of one right now, but there's a lot of stuff out there that's solving an issue that doesn't exist. And that it really can be like Grandma Gatewood, this, mascot of the Appalachian Trail. She just used a shower curtain, as her tarp. And a shower curtain works if you know the knots that you need to know to set up a tarp, and you can learn those knots in an afternoon from one YouTube video. You don't need a design that's trying to deal with condensation on on a tent when it really mostly has to do with how you set the tent up. Really clever ways of having little vents on the top or whatever of a tent is not going to deal with condensation. You're going to get condensation on a trail for sure.
Yeah, it's it kind of just feels like things are overcomplicated, not only just like in gear design, but just in hikers' heads. Like just listening to you talk, like I feel like I've overcomplicated things so much and just thought too much about certain things. I I mentioned just before that I'm heading out on an FKT attempt on my local through. I'd love to give you a little like scenario of if this was you, what
Yeah.
what would be the ultimate gear list? I unfortunately can't take your advice because I'm heading out very very soon. I won't have time to change much, but I'll give you this sort of context and maybe you can put together something. So it's 650 miles,
Uh-huh.
unsupported FKT, so carrying all food and gear from start to finish. No outside support, no resupply in towns. Sleeping in open air shelters akin to the AT shelters every night, so on wood, and no wild camping's allowed. So really, there's no need to bring a shelter of any kind because no matter what, I basically have to sleep in a shelter each night. I could camp at those shelters at the campsites. But yeah, what would your thought process be for sort of creating a base gear list for something like that?
Are you carrying a shelter, or do you know, like, for sure you always get to be in a shelter?
For sure, you always will because
Okay.
yeah, you have to basically. And so I'm planning to be in a shelter every night, so I won't carry a tent of any kind.
So the most important thing that I think of immediately is you need really good earplugs. I know that sounds like it's like a little thing. I know it sounds like it's a little thing, but I've obsessed. Maybe I should make videos on just earplugs. I did it on like disposable water bottles. But
It's come up
Max,
plenty in your YouTube videos. So
yeah,
I remember you,
okay.
you talking about it
Earplugs,
multiple
like
times. Like you
so
have,
Max,
I think the only thing you bring spares of is earplugs in your whole gear list
well, also headphones, but like
and headphones.
uh
Yes.
so earplugs really important. I'd get the Tensor by Nemo because that's like the the new Uberlight, and you need a real sleeping pad. Sleep is so important if you're doing an FKT, and so that's where you're going to be spending most of your weight. You don't need as much active clothing because you're going to be hiking really fast. So you probably don't need more than I don't know what the top I mean, the lowest temperature is going to be, but some kind of alpha hoodie. What
Yeah.
will
So
the
never getting to freezing.
okay?
I'm not going to be
So
able to
then
do
a
the
60.
Fahrenheit conversions in my head, but it won't get that cold pretty much ever.
So you always have to bring a fleece. So a fleece, probably a Sam Bob fleece because they have this new alpha that stretches. A Alpha Direct hat, which is like less than an ounce. The reason that I'm not going into like sleeping bags is they're all sort of the same. You know what I mean? They're just quilts. So like you can get an enlightened equipment quilt. You can get. I'm all about 7D. Catabatic uses a different kind of fabric, which is better, but is heavier and doesn't pack as well.
Have you heard of the Cumulus Aerial? That's the one I've got. That I'm going
Okay,
to use,
that's
I
so
think.
cool. I just heard about it. They're using like a false bottom kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's dope. I'd love to try that out. And that's in I don't know, is it like 17 ounces, something like that? It's pretty light.
Jeez.
Half a kilo?
I've got my. I'm going to switch to ounces here, then I can tell you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is.
What is it in grams?
It's like 380 grams.
Okay, so it's under a pound. That's great. 280 is,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah.
under a pound. It's just under a
Well
pound. It's
under a
like 15
pound, and
ounces.
it's. I think it's a 2 degree bag, comfort ratio ratings Celsius, so close to freezing.
Yeah, Cumulus is this cool new company. I want to try more of their stuff. Their puffy is also really neat. Um, but yeah, so you're not carrying you're not, and then Lev makes I think the only real rain jacket right now is maybe Yamatomochi has one, but Lev Lev makes a like 3.8 ounce sil poly or sil nylon rain jacket that takes like a year to get because he's individually making it. But that's the one. I
Right.
mean, you can bring a frog togs too, fine. But the Lev one with full pit zips is what's up right now.
That's something that also I should have mentioned is it likely will rain, a fair bit. Like it's going to be pretty wet. Probably half the days I'll get a bit of rain. So rain
Well, then
jackets
if
key.
you can get it if you can get a Gore-Tex Shake Dry, then get the Gore-Tex Shake Dry. But the only place you're going to find that is Reddit. So, and only it seems like only in size medium. There are no size larges.
Yeah.
So
It's a bigger problem here in Australia is getting all these niche pieces of gear as well. It's like it's so hard to get
yeah,
anything. I've in advance ordered quite a few things for this FKT, weeks and months in advance because getting it here is hard. We don't really have many ultralight outfitters at all. And so it's just like shipping it over from the US and hoping that it comes basically. But one thing I can
yeah.
add that I literally don't have on my lighter pack is earplugs for the huts.
Oh my
And
God, yeah.
I don't know.
It's that.
I don't typically struggle too much to sleep with people around, but I also haven't slept in huts much over the last couple of years, and so I 100% will be adding those in at the very least.
Yeah, yeah. The snoring hikers snore a lot.
Oh,
So,
so much, so
um,
much.
but yeah, those and. Yeah, I mean, being that's something that I'm surprised about with FKTers. The two things that I'm surprised about. First, that they're not obsessed with ultralight because it really makes a difference. It's a lot more sort of pounding on your body, and you're literally carrying it as you're trying to go faster over, hundreds of miles. So you will be, you know, triathletes are really obsessed with ultralight. Marathon runners are really obsessed with the weight of their shoe, and then FKTers are sort of like, I should just be light. And then the other part is like it doesn't seem like they do a lot of like biometrics, and there's not a lot out there on what kinds of supplements they're using because there's a whole world where you could optimize that. So,
We're just dirt bags. We don't think about this kind of stuff.
yeah,
Have you thought about FKTs? You have so many miles on your belt, and I don't know how fast you're doing these trails. How many days were you on the PCT for this season?
I think like 4.5 months, something like that. I go fast. I'm sort of an emotional hiker, so I go fast when I need to work something out. I go
Sure.
fast when I get too into my head and I need to get into my body. Like I need to feel my body again.
Mm.
And doing huge days, you feel your body, and I can stay focused on a goal all day. And so I can be focused on where will I be at noon? Where do I need to be at 9? When I wake up, I have this like really serious goal. And I do that when like my mind's just getting out of control and I need to focus on a super specific goal. Otherwise, like it's about being quiet in nature and allowing the pace of nature to affect the pace of my insides. And so it's really just about being out in nature and allowing myself to sort of like become with it. And huge days doesn't allow for that in the same kind of way. I'm in this like intense mind space. So I
Sure.
do
Yeah, it's a
both, but
different thing.
I don't prefer big miles. I really don't like getting competitive with people. I know like young men want to like, that's a fun thing. Who's faster? I don't like that vibe. So try to stay away from that.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, you've spent more time outside than most human beings probably ever will. What is it about outside and the backcountry and the natural environments that keeps just dragging you out season after season?
I think like it has everything that a human life need. I mean, that's a big question. I've thought about this a lot. Like, why do I like this thing that's sort of awful? Like if someone looked like, why don't I like just sitting in, like I've lived abroad a bunch, and the days can be like I personal train someone in the morning, I personal train someone at night, and the rest of the time I'm just at a spa. Why don't I like just sitting in a sauna and then cold plunging all day and then going getting really nice food at some restaurant in Thailand or Bali. And I think the reason why is there's something really beautiful about always having a goal, but knowing the goal doesn't matter. So like there's not the stress of like the goal being some real goal, like some real goal. You know that it's ridiculous. I love the ideas of backyard ultras where it's just ridiculous because most goals are ridiculous. The things in life that matter the most to me are relationships. And so like nothing that I do in my life for like career development isn't as important as spending time with the people that I love and developing relationships, which the trail also has. Like in domesticated society, if you live in a town in America, I'm on Monday, I'm saying, do you want to get a beer for 2 hours on Friday? And that's the only time that I get to see the people that I love. And then there's a simplicity, like there isn't a lot of noise out there. Like literally, there's not a lot of noise, but also there's not a lot of noise with media. And if you want to be alone, you just like hike on or you stop for a second and the people go and no one's insulted by it. And so you can be alone for as much as you want to be alone, and you can be with other people for as much as you want to be with other people. And if you want to have life friends, like the people that I hiked my first Pacific Crest Trail with, they're friends. I'll be friends with them forever. They're like, and I spent more FaceTime with them than people that I've known for 15 years in domesticated society. So there's really great goals that you can get really passionate about that actually don't matter. That's important. There's relationship, which I think is the most important aspect of life. And then there's like this fun little problem solving sets that happen throughout the day. There's always these little problems that you have to fix, and they're really fixable. You know what I mean? And the worst thing
Yeah.
that can happen is that something is that you experience a lot of inconvenience. Now you're wet, you messed up with your tent, and you're going to have to deal with being wet. But you know how you messed up, and you know how you'll solve it the next time. It's very fixable. And then the last thing is all of the problems are really literal and physical. And so, like, I'm tired, I'm wet, I'm hungry. And you know that's the reason you're in a bad mood. And when that gets solved, it's solved. And in domesticated society, I think most problems are metaphysical, which, you can just roll in your head about. And there's not a lot of those sort of meta problems on trail. It's just very, very literal. So,
I ask almost all my guests why they love outside so much, and I don't think I've ever heard it explained so well and in a way that resonates so much with me. That was actually, it was beautiful. It's simple. There's intense relationships because you're spending so much time with people in a way that you just never could in everyday life. It's impossible to spend 24 hours a day with people for months on end if they're in your trail family. And yeah, I love how you put these. There's like real goals that don't actually matter. That's such a great way of putting it,
yeah.
and it's so true. It's like you have purpose out there, but like it's not a big deal if
Yeah.
things
So
don't
what?
go exactly how you planned. It's fine, but you still have that sort of drive every day. Another thing I love is just it's hard. It's hard a lot of the time, and you get to just find out a lot about yourself in a way that you can't in a city where everything's sort of handed to you if you want it to be. Yeah, it's magical. I just want to go through hike again, right now.
Well,
How
you're gonna
was
have to
the
soon.
Yeah, I'll be out bush very soon. How was the PCT for you this year? I'd love to just end by talking about the PCT because that was the most incredible experience of my life last season, and I love reminiscing about it. What was the PCT season like this year? What was like? There wasn't was there a lot of wildfires and like sort of big issues like that on the trail? I didn't see too much about all that.
Yeah, this was a Goldilocks year, and that's what I was like telling people as we were
Yeah,
finishing. We
that's the
didn't
vibe
have,
I got from the
yeah,
outside.
yeah, it was no fire closures, little to no snow, like very manageable snow in the Sierras, not a lot of weather at all, like not a lot of rain. It was just sort of perfect. I don't know. I
How
think
was it
that
for you?
the Pacific Crest Trail and the Appalachian Trail, I'm moving into. I've been doing trails for long enough now that I'm no longer doing it for the reason that a lot of other people are doing it. So, like, I started transitioning the second time that I did the Appalachian Trail, now the PCT. The social is very different in figuring out how to best sort of interact with the other people. that are on trail, because there's this, even though I made really good friends and I love most hikers, I'm experiencing it in a really different way than they're experiencing it. This is a lifestyle that I've chosen to live maybe for the rest of my life. And for them, they're having their first experience. And so figuring out how to be in that position and to support them in the way that I can, but also like, how do I, the friendship has a certain complexity there, because what I'm seeing is really different. And so figuring that out I'm still figuring that out, but like, I deeply, deeply love trail. I deeply just love walking forward, and every day is good, always. Even when it's terrible, every single day is amazing.
That
And
could not be more true. Yeah, that's what I tell people, that, and people don't understand it, they haven't hiked. Every day is better than pretty much any other day off the trail. Like,
yeah.
even the crappiest days and the crappiest weather, and I've been through some terrible weather on different trails around the world, and I've been in pain and hurting, and things have sucked, but every day is good. Every day is so good. It's really profound. It's a really
Yeah.
profound thing. And I tell people, like, everyone needs to through hike once in their life, and just to experience that and challenge themselves.
Yeah, there's like, if you ask yourself, when in your normal, like, now I've lived enough different lives that I can be like, where in my normal life have I been happy for 6 months without a day where I would, like, when does
Yeah,
that happen? And so
yeah,
it's not happy, like, you're not going to get as many like bliss experiences as if you went on some, like, I don't know, a broad vacation or something. It's just peace and good. And even when it's terrible, there's this remove inside, because you found a peace inside where you can look at your feet hurting, or you can look at the fact that you're cold. And there's just this, like, but I'm here and I'm doing this, and I feel so
yeah,
alive, and so when it's bad, the badness is part of what makes it nice, I guess.
yeah, a
So,
100%. And it's no surprise that so many through hikers experience the post trail blues, because it's just like, as soon as you're off trail, the bad is kind of just like bad. The bad day is just a bad days, and there's no sort of redeeming factor there. And it's just like, yeah, you're so used to this sort of very even leveled high the whole time. At least I experienced that when I got back to Australia after the PCT last year in particular. I was just like, man, life just, it's not as good when I'm not on trail. It's a weird feeling.
yeah, it's a hard thing to deal with. I'm trying to think about how I can make a video on post trail depression and the best ways to deal with it. But
Mm,
the reality is it's hard, and it comes for pretty much everyone, and there's ways to mitigate it, like staying occupied, constantly staying like, not occupied like, I'm going to wake up and I'll go to the gym and then I have my job and then I come. It's like, you need to be occupied all the time for a little bit. Otherwise, and that's the only way that I've seen people deal with trail depression, is they get off trail, and they have something that requires their full focus all day, for at least a
mm,
month. And the worst, I had a joke with my friend, Snake Eyes. No in room by self. You don't get off trail. You have to have no in room by self. Avoid that at all costs. Because that's
mm,
what you think you want. That you think you just want to sit on a bed and watch Netflix and not walk for a little while. That is like absolutely the thing not to do. And yeah, you slowly have to sort of rebuild this life that you haven't taken part in for the
yeah.
last 6 months.
I think that's good advice, though, in room by yourself, because it's like almost counterintuitive. Because when you're out on trail, some of the most blissful, incredible moments are when you're by yourself, whether it's just in your tent or on the trail walking. And so you're so used to having such incredible time with your own company that it's like, when you get back to regular life, yeah, it's so true. You've just got to stay occupied, and try and be around people that you love, and integrate back into the life systems. What were some of your favorite moments from the PCT this year? Do you have a few highlights, a few favorite days, favorite people, favorite memories?
Yeah, I mean, I'll think about that and come up with, but like, the first is like, one of the most amazing things about trail is that it's not highlight based like in domesticated society where you have a holiday. It's
Yeah.
it's it's just super great every, like my highlights are like there's a day in Washington on the Cascades where you're going over, this glacial peak and you're getting into Stehekin. And every time I've done the Washington section once and then the PCT twice. Every time that's just there's this experience of like deep wildness. Like it's you're as far out there. That point right before Stehekin is you look out and there's nothing, there's just mountains everywhere. If it's nighttime, there's no lights, there's no power lines, there's no cell phone towers, there's nothing. And I love that moment. Trying to
It's
think.
interesting because we had a fire closure at Glacier Peak Wilderness in 24. So we didn't go through that section of PCT, but we detoured around it, and on that detour was that the most intense feeling of being in the wild that I had on the whole trail as well. It was just like I'm out here, and it was the detour was really rugged and overgrown, and at times didn't feel like a trail. And we're doing all these rogue river crossings, and we did a sort of a glacier crossing and all this kind of stuff, and it was crazy. But I just had this feeling of like, holy crap, like I am out here, and it was kind of like a bittersweet thing because we were so close to the end, and that made me want to stay out there more. But it was super magical, and I had that feeling in the Sierra so often as well. It's so wild. It's incredible. I spent some time in Europe this year, did some backpacking in the Alps, and that was the biggest thing I noticed, and maybe missed the Sierra and Washington so much, is the mountains are just as beautiful, but it's just you don't get the feeling of being in the wild. There is power lines in the Alps and roads and refuges up there, and people like cattle grazing and that kind of stuff, and it's a different thing.
What do you think about like what is it about being so far out there, that wildness that you like, that you love?
I love the feeling of being. I don't know. I love being self-reliant, and I think when you're that far away from any civilization and any help, it's just like you're forced to be self-reliant. There's no other way. Like the only way to safety if something goes wrong is to walk out yourself, kind of thing. And I love that feeling. And I also just think it's like, it almost helps you just forget about civilization. And you talk about one of the benefits of travel is like you're removed from media. You're so removed from everything because there's no reception for days, no matter where you walk. It's just like you almost get to the point where you forget about all of that, and it's just you and the bush and the trail and the people that you're with, and it's just, you know, I feel like we're meant to be outside, and it's like just you become the most raw and real version of yourself when you're outside, and that's just sort of exaggerated when you're really in the wild. And I think that's why I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like a feeling for me, there's like a feeling of being small. I see that I'm just another animal on this earth sitting down. And the insignificance of my life is so, in that way, is so freeing. Like it's just like it's not, all this stuff is not that important. All I have to do is like enjoy being here and being alive and feeling alive. Like I really experienced that in the wild.
I love that feeling of feeling small, and I know you've spent some time in the Himalaya. For me, when I was in Nepal and doing some trekking and some mountaineering there, that's when I felt the smallest in such a positive way, and it was surreal. Where I'm from in Western Australia, our highest mountain in my state is like 3,000 feet. So it's like it's tiny. I live in a very flat state, which is why I tend to travel a lot these days. But going to the Himalaya and like you know, I climbed a peak called Island Peak. It was 20,000 feet, and from there you could look up a few thousand feet at Everest, and it's just like I've never felt so insignificant and small, and like nothing else mattered in that moment. And it was magic. It was so magic.
The Himalayan mountains really, there's a kind of fear that happens in the face of them. They're
Yeah.
majestic, but they're a bigger deal than you are, and they know it. You know what I mean? And
Oh
you
yeah.
feel it.
Yeah.
There's like a human animal fear when you look at those mountains, for sure.
they have a personality and a spirituality to them, and you can feel it walking amongst them. It's
Totally.
it's 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 wild, and it's not as wild as probably a place like Washington because there's tea houses and there's people everywhere, especially on some of the more popular treks. But you still sort of get that feeling, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad I heard listening to one of, I think your last podcast or something. You said you did the three pass trek, and right? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, we did like a 35-day sort of expedition where we did the three passes, we did Gokyo Lakes, we did Everest Base Camp, which was all just sort of a means to an end to get to these three different mountaineering peaks that we attempted.
Right.
I
And you
summited
did
two of the
Lobo.
peaks.
Yeah.
Loboshay and Island are the two that I summited. Yeah,
Loboshay looks like really intense and amazing. Like that ice wall at the end looks like serious.
it's
So,
it's intense, dude, and I was somehow convinced by my crazy mate Lockie to climb Loboshay alpine style, so without use of fixed lines and without
oh,
use of porters. So we carried our own camp and all our own climbing gear up to high camp, set up, and then with the help of a Sherpa, we fixed our own lines to the summit, and that was one of the wildest days I've ever had outside. There's like an ice rock wall sort of just near high camp that you head out on, and we essentially free soloed that. It was freaking crazy, and then just steep snow all the way to the summit, and then the summit is so cool. And we had terrible weather, and it's just it was a good day. One of
that's
those type
awesome.
two fun days.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have photos or stuff on any of your like socials
I have
of
a
your Loboshay?
I have a full YouTube video actually about it where it's just me dumping GoPro footage into a YouTube video. But I had yeah, I sort of documented it, which is pretty cool to, to look back on actually. It teleports me back to the death defying experience. But yeah, I need to get back to Nepal. Hey, it's a special place.
Yeah, and it's very something that I tell everyone is that it's very available, it's very cheap. It's just one long plane ride and you're there. And I tell people like I talked to Johnny Z about it and I talked to other experienced hikers that have done so much hiking. I'm like, go abroad, just experience some of the different mountain ranges. Like they have such different personalities, they look very different, and Nepal is just super available.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, it really is. Yes, especially for Aussies. Like for us, it's really accessible.
Right.
The U the US is the hard place to get to for us. But for me, like I've done a lot of travel, and the US is by far the most incredible place for hiking in the world. And I've only done the PCT, and I did the Tahoe Rim Trail off the PCT and stuff like that. But I'll be coming back next April for a few months, and I cannot wait to explore a bit more over there.
Yeah, well, cool. Yeah, so do the Hayduke or whatever. The uh
Oh,
the
the
Great
Hayduke
Divide
would be
Trail.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, GDT, Colorado Trail. There's a lot of stuff that I'd like to tick
Yeah.
off. Obviously, I'd like to do another triple crowner as well, but I'm a married man, and it's kind of hard
Uh-huh.
and getting harder to take half years off. But we'll see what happens. You live in an incredible place, though. Are you on the east coast of the US?
Right now I'm in New Mexico. So I'm
Okay,
out
cool.
on a big ranch. So it's just desert and quiet and it still sort of feels like trail, which is really nice.
I want to ask you one question before we finish because I know people will be curious. What's your favorite of the Triple Crown as someone who's done all three of them and two of them twice?
Well, I've heard this question. I've heard this question a lot, so I have a whole answer because
Yes,
people ask
please.
it a lot. The answer is my favorite trail is the CDT, and the best trail is the PCT.
Wow.
And so and I think that the CDT is the best because you do it the third. Um, like as your last triple crown.
Mm,
That like the CDT is will be your favorite trail if you love hiking. Like you love hiking. You're not hiking for the views only. You're not hiking for the community only. You're hiking because like literally just walking forward in the woods is like your favorite thing. And if that's the case, the CDT gives you quintessential trail in every single condition more than you could possibly ask for. It gives you, and you have to
Wow.
work for every, like the winds in Washington, you really have to work for. If you want desert, you have the basin. It's more extreme than any desert, and so the CDT can be your favorite, but you sort of have to get there. I don't think it would be your favorite if it was your first one, and have a strong opinion that you do it southbound. So, and then the PCT is like
Mm.
I call it white sugar. It's all the good stuff. You just get all the good stuff. So like it's great. It's just always great because
Yeah.
it's just the good stuff. But yeah, the CDT has the not good stuff too, which is actually quite amazing.
Hmm. When I finished the PCT, and still to this day, I could and I can't imagine there being a better trail on earth. And I hope I find it. And maybe if I do the CDT one day, that'll become a better, more memorable experience. But the PCT is just, I tell everyone I meet it's the best trail on earth. And we'll see if that changes.
Yeah, I like making the comment. The AT is definitely the third best trail in the world. Like it's just, you know what I mean? That's like sort of a joke.
Yeah.
But also like just something that I've run into with a lot of hikers that is something to think about is your first trail is always your first trail. And your experience of your first long trail that you're out there for 6 months, you're not gonna have that again. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
like sometimes people will be like the AT is my favorite trail, the PCT is their favorite trail, but really it's their first trail. And as you go on to doing more like long 6 month trails, know that there's that first experience you're not going to have that again, but the trail itself can still be incredible.
Hmm. Yeah, so
So
true.
yeah.
Well, thanks, Ezra, man. I really appreciate your
Yeah.
time and your expertise and your experience. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's fun talking to you, and maybe I'll see you out on trail. I hope to. It'd be fun to
Yeah,
run into you.
yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen at some point. Where can people find you? What's your YouTube channel, your Instagram?
Extra ultralight on YouTube and extra ultralight on Instagram. So
Incredible. I'll leave those links in the podcast description. Go follow Ezra, and yeah, his YouTube channel is just a wealth of knowledge and super interesting and valuable. So yeah, go check him out. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast wherever you're listening. Leave us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys very soon. Cheers.